Hey, Shane Plays here. Talk about my spoiler-free thoughts, impressions, review, what have you, of Star Trek Beyond. Da na 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 dun dun. I am not responsible for any mental damage that may have resulted from watching this video. Okay, so went saw Star Trek Beyond last night. On Friday night, I didn't hit it on Thursday night. Sometimes I'm like, I'm all right up on the Vanguard, but last night I waited till Friday night. I liked it. I'm not going to beat around the bush. There's good, there's bad, of course. And remember, I'm going to try to be spoiler free in here, but I will, if there's stuff that was obviously spoiled in the trailers, I'm going to talk about that in this review. But overall, I liked it. It may actually be in some ways my favorite of the three. Um, Only because, and I'll get into this here in a second, there's parts of it where I finally feel like we see that bright, multicolored optimism of the original series in Star Trek in general, which the JJ verse movies, which evidently the timeline of the JJ verse is officially the Kelvin timeline because the Kelvin was the ship that got blown up at the beginning of 2009 Star Trek and all that. Anyway, to me, it's the JJ verse, which has good things and bad things. The JJ verse, and I'll talk about this a little bit as well, is a little bit too action oriented. There's nothing wrong with action in Star Trek, but these movies are basically action movies, and Star Trek at its heart is not just action, and that's something that's been missing a lot from the JJ movies. And of course, this was not directed by J.J. Abrams. It was directed, I think, by Justin Lin, who is who's been doing like Fast and Furious and stuff like that. It wasn't all Fast and Furious. It was much more Star Trek than Fast and Furious. I'll just say that. But anyway, I like the movie. Um, eh, it'll have to stand the test of time. I don't really say a movie is great or the best of the series or whatever until I think the true test of a movie is when you catch it a few years down the road when you're not expecting to catch it. You're not in the mind, I am going to see Star Trek. And then you just let the movie be the movie and it just hits you. And then you're like, oh man, this was so good. Or you'll be like, it wasn't as good as I remember or whatever. Or you watch it back to back with the other movies a few years down the road to compare. But first impressions were, I think it was really good. It may even be, at least vast majority of it, may be my favorite of the three. Okay, so as I've said, I mean it's a good movie, um, and I'll kind of I'm going to go into some of the good and the bad um, at this point, and I'll just say again, good movie. The first 10 or 20% of the movie feels finally like Star Trek, like the Star Trek we know, that bright, optimistic, multicolored Star Trek. And like I said, that's been missing from a lot of the other, or both of the other JJ movies. Earth, Starfleet has felt dark and grim, all these grays and all that. Now they did, and I do give them credit for, they did the red, yellow, blue shirts once they're actually on the ships, which I think is an essential part of Star Trek, the color coding of the uniforms. And I never quite understood why, even though I love Wrath of Khan, I never understood why in the motion picture Wrath of Khan, in all the movies up until Generations, did away with that. So I was really glad that they brought that back in 2009 Star Trek. But other than that, we didn't really have that bright. It's this. There's optimism. You would see Earth, and it would just seem kind of gray, and I don't know. But there's the first on the ship, and they go to a star base, and it just looks amazing. It looks like Star Trek, bright, happy, vibrant. And that's been missing. So I hope we'll get more and more of that as they continue with these movies, which evidently they are. They're already talking about Star Trek 4 that somehow is going to feature Chris Hemsworth as Kirk's dad. So we don't know how. Now, I'm just going to, and I'll say right now that the star bases At least the starbase we see in this movie looks really cool. There's probably going to be some people that be like, hey, that's not what starbases in Star Trek are supposed to look like. But man, this starbase looked really cool. There was a lot of really cool design and futurism. People projecting what like when thinking, hey, what might things look like in the future? Um, it was really neat. I was really impressed with the starbase. The nostalgia part of me, I'm like, hey, star bases are supposed to look like, basically big slabs of metal in space. And, but this star base was cool, man. I can't argue with that. So, um, the uniform, I got notes. This must be a good review because I got notes. Notes. All right, so the uniforms, I they've changed the uniforms to be more like the original series, where it's they've got the little styling on the sleeves like the command stripes or whatever, and they're more of a fabric like we would expect. The first couple of movies, the fabric of the shirts had sort of this futuristic looking fabric, um, like this sort of texture to it, where this has gone back to more of a regular looking fabric, and the necks come up a little bit, and it's much more of like, I guess, kind of like the uniforms used to be in the series. I actually don't like that. They didn't look as cool to me as the first couple of movies. Once you get into the multicolored, different colored uniforms, the red, yellow, and blue. Um, but I can't argue that they do look more like it's almost like they're trying to work the movie series more towards the original series design. The uniform design and the character design and all that. Now the ships still look radically different on the inside, and the Enterprise still looks different on the outside. It's more of that classic hot rod look, in the nacelles and all that in the original Enterprise. Uh, but the general style and design of the movie, it seems like they're trying to get closer and closer to the original series, and that also plays into the how the characters look. Kirk, Chris Pine is looking more and more Shatnerish. I don't know if I guess I invented that verb or adjective, Shatnerish adjective. With his hairstyle and just how when you first see him, you're like, oh, that looks much more like Shatner. Um, there's just the way they look, and Scotty looks different with his hair, and but they're kind of doing slightly different stuff with their hair. And the characters are getting a little older. The first Star Trek came out in 2009. That was 7 years ago. So the actors themselves are aging a little bit. So they're starting to look a little bit more like who we remember from the original series. They'll never look exactly like them, but there's starting to be a change, a kind of a difference in how they look with both the character design in the movie and as they age a little bit. So I thought that was cool. Um, and also there's a scene. This was, I don't know if this was done on purpose or if it was just a coincidence or what, but there's a scene in the movie where they toast to absent friends. And in that scene in the background, you can't help picking him out, is the actor that plays Chekov, Anton, um, who of course died in real life a few months ago. And that was just really, you're like, wow, very poignant. And like I said, I don't know if that was already in there or if they re-edited it or what, but and they don't make a big deal out of it. You just pick up on it, or at least I did, and I thought that was really nice. Jayla, you can't help but have seen Jayla in the characters. She's the female alien that is like real pale skin and has like the markings on her face. Great character. She wasn't quite what the trailer, and she can fight. Don't get me wrong, but the trailer makes her out to be like the trailers make her out to be like this almost like Klingon warrior woman kind of, and she can fight, but that's not quite how her character is in the movie. But I did like her character. Um, Her character was both sweet and tough and interesting. Um, and I thought she was a good introduction, and I hope we see more of her. So, um, that I did like her character a lot. I won't talk much more about who she is or why she's there or anything like that. But and you know, they almost made it look in the trailers like that she was going to be kind of a romantic foil for Captain Kirk. I'm not going to say whether or not that plays out that way. I'll just say that there's, you know, Jayla's not quite the character, and I'm not saying she's a bad guy or any of that or a good guy. I'm talking about the character herself is a little bit different than what I was expecting from the trailers, but I did like her a lot. And then, you know, another thing I really liked about the movie is the Kirk Spock Bones relationship is really starting to come together, and that's it. Now you had the Kirk Spock relationship from the first couple of movies. They established that, but the Kirk Spock Bones thing hasn't been as strong, and that was a lot more evident in this movie. And there's a lot of time spent with Bones and Spock sort of spending time together and showing that they care about each other, and that was nice. And I do like Carl Urban as Bones. I think the casting for the most part in these new Star Trek movies has been pretty good. Um, you know, Simon Pegg as Scotty is probably the most jarring. Looks wise and even the way he talks and all that, it doesn't feel like Scotty from the original series. But I do like Simon Pegg's take on the character. Um, but you know, like Carl Urban, and I even think Chris Pine's a good Captain Kirk. Zachary Quinto as Spock at times. Sometimes I feel it's dead on. Other times I'm like, this just doesn't feel like Spock. But as the movies progress, you know, they are becoming more and more the characters. And I'm sure that was the plan. That's why they cast these young actors so they could make several movies and establish them as the characters, you know, so people would start associating them with the characters. Having said that, I still would prefer to have the Prime universe. But, and you know, I've said before during radio interviews on my radio show, Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, that's live on Saturdays out of Little Rock, also goes out as a podcast. It it actually goes out over the air 96.5 FM in Little Rock. It J.J. Abrams kind of did a genius thing with this alternate timeline. He rebooted, but he kept the Prime universe intact, and I think that's genius. So people can still play around in the Prime universe, but you've also got the Kelvin universe, if you will. So let me check my notes here, see if I missed anything on the good that I wanted to mention. Again, like I said, it's you know, 75% action, just an action movie, sci-fi action movie, and about 25% Star Trek. But the Star Trek stuff is really, you know, they're finally getting there with the J.J. verse movies, in my opinion. Okay, so the bad, if you will. There's a scene where Kirk is basically just kind of bored, burnout. He's kind of on autopilot with the 5-year mission exploration stuff. And it's cool, they are on the 5-year mission. And I know why they did it for storytelling reasons, and I know why they did it, you know, to show character development with Kirk and all that. But it just didn't fit. At no time in the original series or any Star Trek series do I remember a captain or a major crew member being burnt out or bored with exploration or or Starfleet or any, you know, what the mission. They may have gotten tired of some of Starfleet's bureaucracy and stuff, but they never, you know, were like bored and burnt out and what are we doing out here? You know, the universe goes on and on and on, and you know, there was never any of that. So, like I said, it was interesting for character development. I understand why they did it for storytelling, but it does not fit in Trek. You know, there's just never a part in any Star Trek I can remember that they lose the desire to explore. It just did not fit for me. Um, okay, so this is basically isn't a spoiler because if you've seen the trailers, you know this happens. Okay, but if you haven't seen the trailers by any means, you might want to turn off the video now. The Enterprise, as you see in the trailers, gets destroyed, and it just basically gets taken apart. And I'm tired of that. I'm tired. The Star Trek movies, they keep blowing up the ships in the movies. I think this is like the third or fourth time. I mean, they blew up the original Enterprise in Star Trek 3, which is interesting because this is the third JJ verse movie, and in the third uh, Star Trek series movies where the search for Spock, they blew up the Enterprise, so maybe there's a little echo there. I know they've been echoing stuff, especially from Wrath of Khan. They basically cut and pasted dialogue straight over into into darkness from the end of Wrath or parts of Wrath of Khan. Um, but I'm tired of it. Stop blowing up the ship, because the Enterprise is a character just as much as the the actors are, and then Kirk and all. The Enterprise is a character. It's the mother. It's the protecting mother. It's the warrior father. It's the family home. It's all these things, and the characters bond with the ship. You know, they've blown it up. I can't remember, at least like 3 times or something, or almost blown it up in the movies. They blew up the Enterprise D, the most beautiful ship ever in generations. They blew up the other Enterprise in Star Trek 3. You know, they keep threatening to blow up the ship in just about every movie. Stop blowing up the ship, because it becomes more of a character every time you blow up, or less of a character. And my attachment to the Enterprise is this vital thing. It just becomes more of a, let's just go buy another car. Let's go down to the used Enterprise lot and buy another Enterprise, and off we go. Stop blowing up the freaking Enterprise. And I said frickin', not the other one. Stop blowing it up. Stop. I understand it's this big emotional thing, but stop blowing up the Enterprise. Okay, that's all I got to say about that. I hope they don't blow it up anymore. Yikes. All right, there's this sort of hey, we got to come up with a plan to save everybody thing towards the end. It's not the climax, but it's sort of like the climax before the main climax, where they come up with this plan to save everybody. And I'm sure they thought it would be a quote cool, unquote cool moment, but honestly, it was just cheesy, and it felt like the filmmakers wanting to have a big dumb scene that was quote unquote cool. It didn't fit in Star Trek. This is the thing that people aren't getting, or that some people aren't getting. Maybe the filmmakers don't care. There's stuff that the Star Trek is an established thing. It's an established mindset. It's an established universe. It's an established set of how things happen and the way people think. And I understand they changed the timeline and all that, but there's still, you know, ways people think about Star Trek and how Star Trek is, and how the characters should think, and how the characters, the sensibilities that the characters have. And this scene, yeah, like I said, it was kind of a cool scene, but it was kind of cheesy, and it definitely didn't fit in Star Trek. And it involved, sorry about that, it involved, once again, JJ or Justin Lin or somebody in slipping in a song they like. And I just didn't like it. It just didn't feel like it fit. So, all right, and then the villain. One of the weaknesses of the Star Trek movies from JJ is the villains never feel that great to me. They never feel fully realized. I don't, you had an angry Romulan in the first movie. You had Khan was kind of the villain, kind of not the villain in Into Darkness. Really, the main villain was the Admiral, played by RoboCop. And his actions led to Khan kind of doing what he did. Although we know that Khan is not a good guy. And also, I like Benjamin Cumberbatch as much as the next person, but Khan, the physical characteristics of Benjamin Cumberbatch, or Bach, or however you say, was not Khan. Shouldn't have been anyway. Anyway, the villains in all three have been kind of fully realized, kind of not. And in this one again, it was an interesting villain. As a villain, probably one of the better ones. of the movies, but when you finally realize the motivation and why the villain's doing what the villain is and all that, you're kind of like, it just, I was like, really? So, I wasn't big on why the villain was doing what the villain was doing. Okay, so that makes it sound like that, because I just went through several things I didn't like about the movie, but I did like it. There's a lot of stuff. I like the movie. I go see it again. I'll buy it on Blu-ray, DVD, whatever, ultraviolet. Um, Go see it. I'm not happy with Paramount and CBS right now over these fan film guidelines and the lawsuit on Axonar and all this stuff. But I'm not boycotting. Uh, at least not this movie. Um, Go see it. You'll like it. If you're a Star Trek fan, I think that you'll be encouraged by some of the stuff that you're seeing that they're doing in the movies. If you're just a big sci-fi action boom, stuff goes boom movie, you'll like it. There's a lot to like. So I do recommend it. Now I do have one final thought because this has come up, so I'm going to address it, and they went out of their way to put it in the movie, so I'm going to address it. And I'm not, be very clear, listen to me before you send me hate mail or hate comment. Well, actually, you know what? Leave hate comments because it helps the video get more visibility the more comments there are, believe it or not. They chose to take Sulu, and this has been in the news. It's, I'm not spoiling anything. And if you don't want another spoiler, it's not a big spoiler. It's a very minor spoiler. Turn off the video. But they chose to take Sulu and show that he was in a same-sex relationship with another man, and they have a daughter. And it's not a big part of the movie. It's fine. The thing is, Sulu in the original Star Trek stuff, I don't think it was ever established to be gay. In fact, I think they showed that he liked women. And I know in the movies a couple of times, they indicated they liked women. So I'm not editorializing on whether gay relationships should be shown in Star Trek. I think that if you have a culture that's infinite diversity and infinite combinations, then you're going to have gay relationships. I do wish that instead of co-opting existing characters, and I mean, Star Trek has 50 years of history. So Sulu as a character has been around, 50 years or whatever. They're doing this in the comic books. Now they're doing it in the movies. They're taking existing characters and sort of co-opting them to further, the hey, gay lifestyles are okay kind of narrative. If you want to introduce strong gay characters and strong gay relationships in movies and comic books and all that, do it. Introduce strong characters that can stand on their own. Introduce Jayla character. Introduce her as gay. Whatever. Introduce minor or take characters that have never had it established one way or the other and do it. But even George Takei, who plays Sulu, is Sulu. No disrespect to the actor that's playing Sulu in the JJ movie, but George Takei is Sulu. Still around, Sulu. He even came out and said, don't take existing characters and do this. And Simon Pegg, who helped write the script, was like, well, we're disappointed in George's response, da-da-da-da. Even when you got the actor who plays Sulu coming out and saying, do it a different way, guys. I agree with him. If you're going to introduce new characters, or if you want to show that gay relationships are normal or whatever, and I'm not going into whether I think that's okay or not. That's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm just talking about if you're going to do it, here's the approach. I would rather them not co-opt existing characters to further a narrative, introduce new characters that can stand on their own. And I think that taking an existing character and changing it is sort of a slap in the face to the community you're trying to represent, because you're saying that new characters can't stand on their own. You have to co-opt an existing character. So, again, not a major part of the movie. It was fine, it wasn't a big part of the movie, but since it came up, and since it was in the movie, and since they went out of their way to put it in the movie, then I'm just going to comment on that. But again, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have shown a gay relationship. I'm just saying, why co-opt an existing character? Or even George Takei said, guys, is that really how we want to do it? So if you want to leave comments on that in the video, feel free. please let's not get into nasty flame wars or anything like that. I try not to delete anything in the comments. I had another video about Captain America where I pretty much, had a lot of comments, hundreds of comments, and I pretty much left everything unless it was just absolutely egregious. So anyway, that's my review. Go check it out. I think it's good. I'm looking forward to the next one already. If I had my druthers, I would rather have more regular Star Trek movies in the regular Prime universe. But if you're going to reboot, these are good. There's stuff that I would change if I could. Um, but they're not terrible movies. They're fun movies. They're good movies, and they're getting to feel more like Star Trek. So go check it out. Star Trek Beyond. If you're not, thanks so much for watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And if you'll leave me a comment, maybe a thumbs up on the video, that helps tremendously. Thanks so much for watching.